Hey everybody, just wrapped up once again the biggest interview of my entire life with number 45 in his own building, President Trump. Talk a lot about the Afghan withdrawal, talk a lot about China, talk a lot about what's wrong with the country. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with everyone you know. Much love from SRS. Enjoy the show. Mr. President Trump, it's an honor to be here in Vegas.
My honor.
To interview you. And so you need no introduction, but I'm here as a U.S. veteran. I served in SEAL teams and as a CIA contractor, and I just want to talk to you about some of the most concerning topics when it comes to the combat veteran population.
Good.
And so I'd like to start with some rhetoric that's been in the news lately. I don't believe it. And there's been multiple times where the media has misconstrued some of the things that you say about veterans. The latest being supposedly you calling wounded veterans that have been shot or wounded, suckers and losers.
Yeah. A made-up story. It was made up by a magazine. And I think it was The Atlantic, which is a radical left magazine. And as soon as I heard it, I said, that's a terrible thing, and you don't get rid of it. You know, they make these things and they just use it, the opposing side. They know it's false. I had 26 people that said it never happened. Who would say it? Who would say it? Nobody would say it. A stupid person or a person that's mentally ill. And, you know, as you know better than anybody, I rebuilt our military. We gave 86 billion, 85 billion of it away to Afghanistan so stupidly, but far bigger than even that. I rebuilt our military. I had the best relationship with the military of any president and respect the military more than anybody. And they just made up this horrible quote. I was in this massive rainstorm, massive, and I was supposed to take helicopters to a certain place in Paris. A little complicated. I don't want to be too complicated. And the helicopters weren't able to fly. They were military helicopters, our helicopters. And I looked at it, I said, I'm not going to be able to fly. So I wanted to drive. By the time we realized we had to drive, it was very late. And everybody talked me out of going. And all of a sudden, and it was a mistake, I wanted to go. And somebody made up the story that I said that. And I have so many witnesses. I have one of them in this room right now. He's a witness that I never said it. Nobody would say that. And I went to one the following day in a big cemetery. But they said I said about soldiers, I think it was World War I soldiers, they're suckers and losers, and they're in graves. Think of it. They gave their life for our country. This was in Paris. It was an American cemetery, and they said that, and this was somebody that actually, he didn't say, they made it up with a magazine. You know, they make things up. They don't even have sources. They make things up out of thin blue like a storyteller. And I wanted you to ask me this question because I think it's a terrible, terrible thing. But they make up stories. And then one guy who's a very, sort of a low-life guy, he is a low-life, they got one confirmation and 26 people said it never happened. But the one confirmation was a guy that I fired, a terrible, stupid person, actually, that couldn't do the job well. And I fired him. And he sort of confirmed it. I don't know how he confirmed it, but he did. And it's a totally false story. Nobody would say that. And I would say this to military people. I'm the president of the United States. I say suckers and losers. They gave their life. And it's just a disgraceful story, Shawn. And all I do is deny it. We have so many witnesses. And I said, you know, that's one of those questions where no matter how you answer it, you lose. Do you understand that?
I do.
I can sit here and talk about it for another 20 minutes. And at the end, people would say, even if they have a doubt, you've lost. Just a little doubt. They only need a 2% doubt. And I would think that if people heard that, I think if I heard that, maybe I'd believe it if I was in the military. You know, what do they know? They're sitting there and they heard the story put out by this real rag that's failing badly, losing a lot of money. And, you know, it's interesting. I was doing a rally and I was walking past press and some guy shouted to me, I think from that magazine, "Is it true you called them suckers and losers?" Who? They said, "Military in the graves." I said, now that's a loser. Because as soon as I heard it, I said that you can't respond to it because no matter how vigorously you deny it, people, they have an expression for it. I won't use the expression, but it's a bad expression. It's when they ask you a question that no matter how you answer it, it leaves a telltale stain. And it's a shame that they can get away with it. And we have libel laws now where you can do anything. You can sue. You can spend $25 million suing people, and they laugh at you. It's a disgrace. Shouldn't be allowed, but it is allowed.
Since we're on a long-form podcast and we're not going to take anything out of context,
Yeah.
is there anything that you would like the veteran population to know about what you think of them?
That I love them, that I respect them, that I rebuilt our military, that I got budgets that nobody's ever gotten, that I increased their pay because of the respect I have. Now, if you take a look at what's happening with the military, it's horrible. Under Biden / this woman is she's a communist, I guess. I mean, and I look at action. I don't look at words. Defund the police. She was the head of defund the police. Now all of a sudden she wants to, deny it. She was on the border. She was the border czar, and millions of people poured into our country, and they're from prisons and they're from jails. They're from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're all different. It's like, that's the mental institution on steroids, as you know. And they're and they're terrorists. And they're from jails, though, in many countries. Recently, they came in from the Congo in Africa. Where do you come from? I think 22 people, but many more than that. They're emptying their jails into our country. They say, where do you come from? The Congo. We're in the Congo jail. What did you do? They wouldn't answer. We have the toughest people in the world being dropped into our country, and not from just South America. From South America, yes. Venezuela, their crime rate's down 72%. Their prison population is way down. Their mental institution population is way down. And this is true with many countries.
And that's because they're all coming
using
here?
us as a dumping ground. They're dumping their prisoners. They're dumping their gang members, MS-13. They're dumping everybody into our country. We have a totally open border. And she's a Marxist. She's really a Marxist. Her father is a Marxist professor. This woman ran against, I guess, about 22 Democrats. She was the first to leave the race. She left the race before she even got to Iowa, the first primary state, as you know. And a lot of people followed. And Biden, which is shocking because he's terrible, and terrible for the military, by the way, but he's the worst president in the history of our country, in my opinion. And yet what happened to him shouldn't happen. He got 14 million votes. She got no votes. It was a coup. It was an overthrow of a president. There's never been anything like that. That doesn't mean he's good or he's competent, but he did win. And then they said, we don't want you. We had a debate. And after the debate, he was 17 points down in polls. And they went to him and they said, you're not going to win. You can't win. And we want to get somebody else. And he didn't want to go, and he fought it. And then they said, I think they were going to pull out the 25th Amendment, which is mental acuity or something. And he said, I'll go. Now they're trying to act like it was a friendly. It wasn't friendly. He's a bitter man right now. And he should be. What happened to him, you go through primaries, you win. I mean, he won against 22 people. Now, I think he got very lucky. Things happened. I understand exactly what happened, but he got lucky, but it doesn't matter. He won, getting 14. Think of it. He got 14 million votes. She got none. She never made it to the first contest, which is Iowa. And now she's running. Okay. Now I'm not complaining because she should be easy to beat. This country is not ready for a Marxist or a communist. This country is not ready for somebody that wants to defund the police. that said there will never be fracking in our country. If we don't frack, if we don't drill for oil and gas, we won't have a country, because that's where the power comes from. That's, we can talk about all sorts of things, but that's the power. That powers up our plants.
I'd like to talk about the power grid, but I'd like to start with one of the major concerns in the veteran community is the way that the Afghanistan withdrawal happened.
Terrible.
We had 13 service members killed, one missing an arm and his leg, $7.1 billion in equipment left behind. Allies in Afghanistan have been abandoned, people that we fought alongside with for 20 years. We left the intelligence at our bases that depict where they live, biometrics, everything. Taliban's hunting them down, killing them, raping their wives, raping their kids. We evacuated 120,000 plus Afghans that are unvetted. We have no idea where they're at in our country. And now we're sending them $40 to $87 million a week. It's so bad that I did an interview with Ahmad Massoud. He's the leader of the Afghan resistance.
Right.
We wanted to get in front of Congress to warn us about the oncoming threat that we're facing because we're funding the Taliban.
Yep.
We had made a petition. It now has almost 300,000 signatures. We got it to Representative McCall. He's done nothing, not one thing. Why do you think Congress doesn't want to see Massoud?
Well, I'm surprised when you say McCauley's a good man. But I was so against that whole thing. Just so you know, I wanted to get out, but I wanted to get out with dignity and strength. I spoke to the head of the Taliban on numerous occasions because they were killing our soldiers. They were snipers, and they were killing our soldiers during Obama and a little bit during me at the beginning. And I heard about it. And I said, get the head of the Taliban. And the press went crazy when they heard I was speaking to him on a telephone. And I told him in a pretty tough way, but nice enough, don't do it. Abdul, his name is Abdul. He's still there. He's still the head. And I said, don't do it. And he understood that. And in 18 months, not one person was killed. You know that during my time.
Yes.
Nobody would have been killed. Then we had a rigged election, and they took over, and it started. It started in a lot of places. Russia started to form along the border. Would have never happened if I was president. But and by the way, October 7th would have never happened in Israel because Iran was broke. They had no money to do anything. Now they have $300 billion. They made it all in the last 3.5 years. I said, anybody that buys from, I just wanted to have a deal with Iran. Very simple deal. Can't have a nuclear weapon. That's it. I want them to be happy. I want them to have great lives. I want them to have a great country. Can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. And I would have had that deal done within a week after the election, but the election was a disgrace to our country, another disgrace. But with Afghanistan, you had to get out, but we were going to get out with dignity and strength. We were going to take our people out, our Americans out. We have people living there, as you said, better than anybody could say it. When you said raping the wives, raping the people, I mean, I assume that could be happening. But can you imagine we didn't take them out? The military ran out first. It was almost like they ran. We didn't remember this. We didn't have one problem for 18 months with them. And the Taliban's rough. They're good fighters. They're ancient fighters in a way, their equipment and everything else, but they're good, very good fighters. But we had no problems. And then when this happened and when I was out, they heard that the military was gone. And I could just imagine somebody coming back and saying, Abdul, the Americans have left. The soldiers are gone. He probably said, you fool. Don't ever tell me that nobody could be so stupid. But Milley was a stupid person, very stupid. We have great generals, but Milley was stupid. Guys like John Kelly are he's one of the dumbest people I've ever met. A bully, but a weak bully. And, we just have some stupid people. Kelly wasn't so involved in that, but we have some really stupid people at the top. But a little bit lower down, the non-television generals are phenomenal. I beat I took 100% of the ISIS caliphate. You know, I took out ISIS.
I do.
It was supposed to take 5 years. I did it in 3 weeks. And we have great generals and we have great military, and they're not woke, Shawn. You know, the people that are woke are the top people. They should all get out. And I'll tell you another thing. I fired a lot of people when they don't do a good job. I fire them. I think it's important. Biden's never fired anybody. She's never fired anybody. Everybody involved in that horrible, most embarrassing day, you understand that. I think it's the most embarrassing day in the history of our country.
It's humiliating.
I think it told Putin, hey, I'm going to go in now. These guys are nothing. That's what it did. And it gave President Xi of China the right to fly bombers all over Taiwan, you know, which he's doing. I mean, it's just a question of time. Although if I get in, I think it's a different story. But it gave him the right to do things that he never did with me. He never was flying. The other day, they flew 38 bombers over Taiwan. They're surrounded by ships and a lot of bad things are happening there. But whoever worked on Afghanistan should be fired. The generals should all be fired. That was the most incompetent thing. They left first, and they left Bagram. Bagram's one of the biggest air bases in the world. You probably know it. You're a military guy. And with the most powerful runways, like 9 feet thick, and, you know, just can handle the biggest loads of cargo and everything. But more importantly, it's 1 hour from where China makes its nuclear weapons, right? And we gave it up, just walked away, just left the lights on, walked away. They left the dogs too, by the way. You know, a lot of people say, what about the dogs? They had a lot of dogs there. The German Shepherd special dogs. Mm-hmm. They left them all. They left them all. Taliban doesn't like dogs, by the way.
Yeah.
But they left the dogs. They left the lights on, and they just fled. There was no reason to leave, but they did. We did want to get out, but I wanted to keep Bagram. And I was set to get out. It was enough already. I was going to take all the equipment. First of all, I was going to get the Americans out. Then I would have gotten some of the people that helped us, but you don't want to go crazy with that. And then, you know, the interpreters, etc., because they had some good people that are probably dead now. You know, the people that got on those planes, that was like survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
The toughest people got on the planes. And those tough people were enemies of ours in many cases.
Yes.
And they got on those planes. And many of the people got on those planes, but they didn't get inside. They were on the outside, and they fell off the plane at 3,000 feet, which is like 3 times the height of the Empire State Building. They fell off the plane. Those scenes of those planes taking off way up in the air, going at 400 miles an hour, and the people falling off the planes.
They won't show those anymore.
The whole thing was so horrible.
They won't show that footage anymore.
They don't show it. They don't. Oh, you're right. I never thought of it. You're right. And they never talk about it. You notice? They don't talk about that. They don't talk about the border. And just to bring you up to date, today it was learned that 818,000 jobs that they said were produced were not produced. They don't talk about that. Yesterday it was revealed, 2 days ago, it was revealed that Joe Biden and the family stole $27 million. Can you imagine if Trump stole $27 million or $2?
It would be everywhere.
They would have stopped everything. They would have stopped the Democrat convention. They'll say, let's make it next week. Biden, it was revealed by Congress, by committees in Congress, I think 3 committees, confirmed $27 million stolen by the family, something having to do with Biden. And you don't hear about that. I didn't see any stories about it. I saw a little piece on Fox, but outside of that, I didn't read one story about it. Can you imagine? They confirmed that $27 million, the night that he made the speech, which was a very nasty speech, the hatred he had for the people that overthrew him. It was an overthrow. It was a coup. He screams. Everything is, you know, he's like screaming all the time. It's like very uncomfortable. But I understand his screamings. That she's got a disorder. But Nancy Pelosi and Barack Hussein Obama and a group of people went to him. They said, you either get out or we're going to wheel in the 25th Amendment.
What did you think when you got that news?
That he was leaving?
That he was leaving. Did you know he was going to leave?
Yeah,
there was a lot of speculation.
But I dealt with him. I mean, my primary contact with him was during the debate. And the debate was very early, if you remember, because he didn't even really have the nomination yet, or, you know, so I didn't care. I gave up everything. I said, they gave me a thing. They really didn't want to debate. They gave me CNN. They gave me Dana Bash. They gave me, who's, not exactly my best friend. And they gave me what I used to call fake Tapper, but I don't call them fake anymore because I thought they were very fair. Both of them were very fair during the debate. But they gave me two people that I would never take. They gave me a network that I would never take, a cable station, CNN. They said, we'd like you will both sit down. I said, look, let's stand up, okay? I was able, that's the only point I got. And they gave me all of these, they said there's no audience. I'd rather have an audience, but they say there's no audience. And they said, we're going to cut your mic off after your question. So they gave me everything. And they thought I'd reject it. I said, I'll take it because it was the only way I could debate him. And they were surprised I took it, but they sort of had to go forward with it. And we went forward. And I wouldn't say he performed brilliantly. This was not Winston Churchill. And he was very white. He wore very white makeup. I don't know what happened to him. I don't think his makeup artist did a great job, actually. I walked in, I said, man, is he white? But he didn't perform too well. And that's where it started with him. There was no chance of that happening before that.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't think he was exactly sharp. He wasn't the brightest bulb in the ceiling, as the expression goes, right? But that's when it started. And then he did a series of interviews to show that he's actually okay. And they were real set-up interviews. George Slopadopoulos from ABC. ABC is the worst of the group, by the way. They're doing the debate. They were going to do the debate. I made a deal with Fox and ABC and also NBC. He's turned down Fox. He's turned down NBC. He'll only do ABC.
Interesting.
ABC is actually the worst of the group, believe it or not. The nastiest. If you're in my line of work, which can be a very dangerous line of work, by the way, I was telling the people at the border, they said, there are some people out there that are pretty rough on the border. And I said, I think so. But I said to him, it's actually very dangerous being the president. It's actually a pretty dangerous line of work, if you think. Just look at the number of people that didn't exactly make it. The proportion is very much higher than race car drivers, or by 15 times. But I said, it's a dangerous line of work, but you have to do it. And you have to do it properly. They were saying, are you sure you want to be here? I say, I have an obligation to be here. The border is a very unsafe place, and we have to straighten out the border. The border czar, who's this Kamala, never went to the border. She went to a border that you would take your family and have dinner there. This is the part of the border. That's not the part that's the problem. But she essentially never went to the border. She was the border czar. She was the worst border czar in the history of the world. There was never a border so bad as this one. Never.
I'd like to go to Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's a major concern of a lot of Americans. We've sent over $175 billion. We've seen no progress. And so I think a lot of people want to know, when you get into office, if you get into office, will you be able to sit Zelensky and Putin down and have them negotiate a deal so that we can spend the next $175 billion on our own infrastructure?
So let me tell you, two countries. Should have never happened, would have never, ever happened. And it didn't happen. For 4 years, there was no talk about Russia going in. And I knew Putin very well, got along with him actually great. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. By the way, people say, oh, he got along with the stupid press. They go, some of the stupid press. Some of the press is not stupid at all. But they say, he got along with Putin. That's a terrible thing. He said, no, that's a good thing. He's got 1,800 nuclear weapons. So do we. And the biggest risk today, when I hear these poor fools talking about global warming, they don't call it that anymore. They call it climate change because, some parts of the planet are cooling and warming. It didn't work. So they finally got it right. They call it, they just call it climate change. They used to call it global warming. Years ago, they used to call it global cooling. In the 1920s, they thought the planet was going to freeze. Now they think the planet's going to burn up. And we're still waiting for the 12 years. We're down almost to the end of the 12-year period. You understand that, where these lunatics that know nothing, they weren't even good students at school. They didn't even study it. They said, we have 12 years to live. And people didn't have babies because they said We only have another. No, it's so crazy. But the problem isn't the fact that the oceans in 500 years will raise a quarter of an inch. The problem is nuclear weapons. It's nuclear warming. The level of power of the nuclear weapon today, you take a look, go back many, many decades and look at Hiroshima, Nagasaki. That was so many years ago. And now you look at today and multiply that, what took place there, by 300 or 400 times. That's the problem. That's the biggest risk today. Now, with our country, the biggest risk is always that. But we also have some very bad people. You have crazy Nancy Pelosi and all these lunatics within our government. They're lunatics. And it's a real problem. But the biggest problem we have, and the world has, is weaponry. Weaponry of other kinds, too, not just nuclear. But nuclear weapons are so massive and so powerful and so destructive. And these poor fools talk about global warming all the time. The planet's going to global warm to a point where the oceans will rise an eighth of an inch in 355 years. They have no idea what's going to happen to weather. And in the meantime, we're spending our wealth on this foolish stuff. When we have people, Shawn, with nuclear capability now. You have 5 countries with nuclear capability that is so devastating, it would be obliteration.
What would you like to see happen with Russia, Ukraine? How would you like to see that deal go down?
So it would have never happened. It didn't happen. A lot of people say, well, how do we know? Actually, Democrats even say that wouldn't have happened. October 7th, Israel wouldn't have happened. But what I've told people, I know Putin very well. I told him, don't do it. It was the apple of his eye. We would talk a lot. And Ukraine was the apple of his eye. I said, don't do it, don't do it. I won't go exactly what I said in terms of why you can't do it, but you can't do it. And he wouldn't have done it. He wouldn't have done it anyway. But when he saw Afghanistan, I think that's when he really said, this is a time that he can go in. And I was out. By this time, I was out. But when he saw Afghanistan, I think that changed his whole thinking toward us. He lost respect for the United States. He also has no respect for Biden. Who does? So Putin went in. Zelensky was involved in the impeachment hoax #1. There was a hoax, a couple of hoaxes, which I won both of them. But he was very honorable. I made a very innocent phone call to him to congratulate him on his victory. One of the people that worked for me, not the brightest one, kept asking me to call Zelensky. Call Zelensky. Oh, please call him and congratulate him, because they wanted to do an oil deal or something. I said, call him, and for the United States. And call him and congratulate him. Kept asking me. Finally, I called him. And they took that call, which was a congratulatory call, and they made it into an impeachment, and I will say I got great support from the Republicans. The Republicans were with me in Congress. I think I got 196 out of 196 votes.